Hello, everyone. How are you? I hope you've all been well. I am a tired boy. I've been spending pretty much all of today. I started the day off with a little bit of study, but then since about like I would say half two, 3 o'clock, I've been putting together a new desk, and cleaning up my room to have it set up, and then moving all my computer stuff, and setting up all the cables. Once it was finally done, and it took me, it took a while. It took a while. I didn't finish until probably about, I want to say, I mean like with I took a break or two, and then I had dinner as well, but so I didn't finish until about half eight, I want to say, and then probably another half an hour just getting the desk set up, like just moving everything. Oh, it took a while. Hello, Clonk. Welcome in. God, Clonk, you, you. I wanted to stream yesterday, but I enjoyed watching you kill Alva during ECW too much. That was incredible. I was almost fainting with laughter when you made Alva submit in the middle of the ring like 10 times in a row. Hello, laughs a lot. Thank God I've got so many resources to make you need the background vibes. That's good to hear. Laughs a lot. I hope you managed to get through everything. I'm sure it's a busy, busy time. But you'll get a nice little break for Christmas, I imagine. And hello, Hanbun. You said hi and then bye, so I imagine you probably immediately left. You might be very tired. Wait, what time is it over in Aussie land? It's 10 a.m. Oh, you okay? So maybe you're not going to bed, but you're probably rushing to go do stuff. So no worries, Hanbun. Thank you for dropping by. None may know the hour of the coming or going of the bunny. No, not the bunny. The banani, banui. Placement finishes soon. Gonna have to actually get a proper job afterwards. This sounds exciting. I have a nice cup of tea next to me, although it's almost empty. But it could be a long break, but that's just like unemployment. Yeah, you just go on the dole for a while. That'll be fine. You'll be grand. You'll get something soon, hopefully, or at the very least, you'll have a few. Maybe you can tide yourself over with a little bit of a uh, sub teaching, I guess. But yeah, that's pretty much how my day has been. As I said, I wanted to stream last night, but for those of you who don't know, Dante Daedalus, he's another VTuber. He puts on a bi-weekly wrestling event called ECW, Extreme Tuba Wrestling, where all different manners of our favorite tubas battle it out for glory inside the square circle. And during a 5-man tables match, Clonk proceeded to, after it was down, everyone else was eliminated, and Clonk was facing Alva. Clonk proceeded to not try and break a table for about 30 minutes and just killed Alva. I'm surprised Alva's still alive or even has a hand or has an arm anymore. Interview for a job on Tuesday. Scary stuff. You'll do fine, laughs a lot. You will do fine. I know for a fact. I have a strong inkling that you'll be fine. And for the most part, I don't know how it is in jobs. Maybe because you're around children, you have to be a little bit more serious. But I found in any of my interviews that once you get past like the basic questions of, walk me through your CV, tell me about a time that you were, had to deal with conflict or something, or that you had to take charge in a project. Once you get through those, it can often just become a conversation between people. Um, you're there to sell yourself, so certainly do. And if you stumble or something, or you can't really think of something, then don't worry. Just do your best. I'm bringing in a boiled egg with googly eyes as Harold Dumpty to tell the kids about the dangers of walls. What? The dangers of walls. I had the children running into walls a lot. Are you gonna throw Humpty Dumpty at the fucking? You have to throw. Oh, climbing over walls. For some reason, Harold. Oh, I see, I see, I see. He is a Oh, I'm sure I would. He's just an intro to the right. That's a really cute way to do it. That's very cute. What you could do at the end of it as well is you could have him sitting on like your desk, and at the end of it you go to go, well, thank you very much, Harold, and then knock him off the desk, and he like cracks and breaks. Be like, oh no, Harold. Was that Harold's like father that you killed that time, or was that his son maybe? Are you slaughtering the Dumpty line like me playing CK2 Crusader Kings 2 and I'm yeah, the moment you anthropomorphize an object, it takes on a lot more meaning. I mean, my PC doesn't even have googly eyes, but I anthropomorphize her. That one was explicitly taught as food, so I hope not. Ah, I see, I see. But what I'm thinking we're gonna do, because I'm admittedly a little bit tired. I'm admittedly a little bit tired today after building. So I'm thinking we're gonna continue our reading about the philosophy of mind, and kind of finish off that chapter on materialism and the various ideas that go around through it. Uh, what do I want to say? Oh yes, so I'm going to try and stream at least once or twice during the week, and I don't count Friday as during the week because I'm a little bit freer then. So I'll try and do that. I'm gonna try and. Ooh, I just suppress a burp. Uh, I am going to try to stream like some games. I'm kind of watching my curtain right now because it's kind of blowing in the wind. The window is open, and I have a second monitor up on a little shelf. I'm worried that it could get knocked off, but I think it's okay. God, I love. I'm not gonna show you guys, but I really do love my background. It's just like art of three of some of the first VTubers I ever watched and people that I highly support, and it's just such a gorgeous like autumn image. Although maybe I should update it soon. Maybe I should update a screensaver for like the winter. I definitely could find some nice stuff. It's just such a pretty painting. The colors in it are gorgeous, and like I love Genzuki's face in it. He's just staring at a leaf. But yeah, I hope everyone else has been well. Of course, we're all probably back to the grind tomorrow, so it's going to be a little tough, but that's okay. We get through things, I think. Oh, I wonder how loud that was because I have a little bit of extra distance to the end of my mic where my mic is now attached. The vibrations might be a little bit softer. I hope at least. But I think we will begin getting into our reading for today. So I'm going to tell the birds to be a little bit quieter, I think. Let me throw a little bit of extra fire into the wood. There we go. Ooh, lovely. And I think we can begin. So last time we kind of stopped at the midpoint of a chapter dealing with materialism and looking into the various ideas that materialist philosophers and physicalists, for example, have conjured up in an attempt to explain what the mind is. Is the mind wholly dependent upon physical processes in the brain? Is what thinking is itself? So we had a couple of ideas. For example, there was behavioralism, which was that for a thing to exhibit, yeah, mental states or capacities, is just to have certain behavioral, what was the word? Behavioral dispositions. So it's sort of the idea that to believe that it is raining or to believe that it is that one does not want to get wet is simply the action to go get an umbrella or to put on some sort of waterproof clothing before going out. But there were some issues with that, primarily that it leads to an infinite regress of there being a constant stream of behaviors that need to be explained, even in a simple act of believing that it is going to rain and thus going to get one's umbrella. There is the issue of that, well, why is one getting an umbrella because it's raining? Well, because one believes that it is cold. But then what's the behavior for that? Or believes that it is bad to get wet. But then that leads to the belief that rain causes wetness. That also leads to a couple of other issues. But it ultimately keeps going back and back, and there needs to be further dispositions to be accounted for. But there was a lot of issues with that. Then we also had, I believe, there was a little bit of discussion on cause and effect, but I believe then there was also the identity theory. The idea that mental states and their processes were simply identical with the states and processes of the brain and the central nervous system. So the mind is basically identical to the brain. Basically, a form of materialism, strong materialism in this case. And I think that's probably where we stopped off. And there was a couple of some interesting things here. The one that I probably found the most interesting was the discussion of how the causal relationships seem to be a little bit different between brain processes. It seems to be a sort of mechanistic or physical causal relationship, but the relationships between various mental states and dispositions seem to be logically tied. And one can't simply look at the firing of neurons and see, well, that was logically it is logically dependent that neuron B fired because neuron A fired. We can't argue that. That isn't, I don't think logic really comes into, in a strict logical sense, comes into physical processes. They are defined by, A causes B in a physical way. But let's see, I'm sure there are other ways that the materialists can conceive of their world to explain what the mind is and how it fits into a physical universe. So, the next topic is functionalism. The multiple realizability objection leads us naturally as it's historically led most materialists to the form of materialism that has been dominant in the philosophy of mind since the 1970s. Welcome in, Teal. I hope you enjoy the reading today. Get nice and cozy. Functionalism takes as its starting point the observation that many things are properly characterized, not in terms of the stuff out of which they are made, but rather by reference to the functions they perform. A knife is defined by its ability to cut, not its material composition. Whether the knife is made of steel or plastic is irrelevant to the status as a knife. The game pieces of checkers are defined in terms of the function each piece plays. In the course of the game, usually the pieces are made out of plastic and move about on a cardboard surface. But in principle, one could draw a checkers board on the beach and play the game using crushed beer cans and dead crabs. Crab bros. Oh no. Edward Fesser is actively against crabbing. Do not crab around Edward Fesser. He will use you as a checkerboard. Or as checkers. Of course, not just any sort of material composition will do. It would be difficult to play checkers with game pieces made of shaving cream. And a knife made out of shaving cream wouldn't truly be a knife at all. But the point is that there still is no specific kind of physical stuff the knives or checker pieces have to be made out of. Lots of things could do the job, as long as they have the right sort of structure to perform the requisite functions. There's so many shells available. No, we use dead crabs. I know. Why? I don't know. I'm guessing his point was to be as silly as possible, like to stress the point of the argument. He could have used shells, but it's like crushed beer cans and dead crabs. Poor crabs. I know. I know. At least they're being put to use. The functionalist claims that something similar is true of mental states and processes. It is not the stuff of which it is made. It is not the stuff of which it is made that makes a particular mental state the kind that it is, whether the firing of neurons or otherwise, but rather what it does, and in particular what sort of causes and effects it has. What makes a sensation of pain the kind of thing it is that it is caused by damage to the body, and tends to cause in turn certain other mental states like anxiety, as well as behaviors like screaming and crying. What makes the belief that it is raining the sort of thing that it is that it tends to be caused by light reflected from raindrops striking the retinas, tends tends in turn, and when a desire to stay dry is also present, to cause certain other mental states, such as the intention to get an umbrella, and tends in tandem with these other mental states to cause bodily behavior like going to the closet to get an umbrella. At least they're being put to use is exactly what I want to be said about my corpse. Are you going to donate your corpse to science laughs a lot? Mental states are to be defined then in terms of their causal relations to other mental states, and ultimately this system of mental states is itself to be defined in terms of its causal relations to the inputs provided by environmental influences on the sensory organs, and the outputs manifested in bodily behavior. I might read that again because I kind of underlined that. I thought I would not trust a scientist with my corpse. That's the most important takeaway from Frankenstein. Then how would you like your corpse put to use? Maybe it can be like taxidermied and you can be turned into a puppet. I don't know why you would want that. That's actually horrifying. Oh my god. That would not be a good thing. Like you could be like that would be a fucked up episode of the Muppets. Anyway, I'm going to reread that because I thought it was a little bit important. Mental states are to be defined then in terms of their causal relationships to other mental states, and ultimately this system of mental states is itself to be defined in terms of its causal relations to the inputs provided by environmental influences on the sensory organs and the outputs manifested in bodily behavior. The whole system manifests the specific kinds of causal relations it does, is what makes each element within it a distinctly mental state or process, and what makes the system as a whole a mind. Whether the system is instantiated in a human brain, the slimy innards of an extraterrestrial, or the central processing unit of a sophisticated robot, is irrelevant. Just as anything performing the right sort of function is a knife, whether made of plastic, steel, or something else, so too can anything manifesting the right sort of causal relations be said to have a mind, whether it is a creature with a nervous system like ours, or some very different sort of being altogether, an ET, an android, or an angel. It's very hard to taxidermy a person. I don't like that you know that, Teal. Yeah, I'm with Lass a lot on this. Why? I used to be fascinated with that. She like taxidermy and preservation of dead shit, and soon found out people are hard to make them not look dead. Oh no, mummy bros, it's so over. We can't taxidermy people. But I did not know that. I imagine was that how your fascination began? That you read about mummies and stuff and the way they preserve their dead, and you were like, oh wait, what can we do today? I think that's very interesting, though. That was a whole plot point in Skullduggery Pleasant. Actually, I can't even remember. I vaguely remember. Everything just kind of runs together when I think of Skullduggery Pleasant. But those of you who don't know, Skullduggery Pleasant was a very popular book series when I was growing up. Not when I was growing up, but during the time that disregard that last point. But it was a very that was yeah. I used to be interested in mummification, and then I was like, well, what about taxidermy? I imagine it's been done. I still love those books. I'm pretty sure I still have a few of them. I may have all of them actually, or most of them. I'll have to check. There's definitely some I kept around. I still have Darren Shan's series, or at least some of them. I think I have all of the vampire series and some of the Demonata ones. I never touched the second series. I read up until the final ones. I still loved Last Stand of the Dead Men and stuff. And those books were so good. I'm gonna have to look this up myself, Teal, and read a little bit about modern day taxidermy of humans, and then probably get put on a watch list or something. But I'll just say in Minecraft at the end of my searches, and I'm sure that'll be fine. The first one and the second book was a bit weak, but they were great afterwards. Oh, the first and the second series. Ah, that's good to hear. That's good to hear. I imagine it was probably tricky trying to find a way to continue things, but I'm glad that he managed to pull it out. It was Derek Landy, wasn't it? Yeah, Derek Landy I think was the author. I might be wrong on that. Oh, but they were good books. They were probably my favorite kind of like uh, young adult books. The Gun series was pretty good as well, but it was a little bit. It was fucking depressing, to be honest. It was a really depressing series. Back to the book. The functionalist claims that something similar is true of mental. Oh, sorry. One of the advantages claimed for this view is that it allows for an analysis of the mind that is, in principle, neutral between materialism and dualism. Functionalism per se holds only that mental states are to be defined in terms of their causal relations. It does not rule out the possibility that these causal relations might be instantiated in a Cartesian immaterial substance rather than in something physical. But of course, the theory also allows that something that is entirely material could have a mind, as long as it is complex enough to manifest the relevant causal relations, and the human brain, being the most complex object known to us, surely fulfills this requirement. Functionalism thereby. Oh, sorry. Functionalism thereby makes possible an explanation of the mind in purely physical terms, and this, together with Occam's razor, seems to favor materialism over dualism. Moreover, since the theory holds that minds could be instantiated in systems other than the brain, it is sometimes suggested that functionalism allows the materialist to rebut the dualist's conceivability argument. If it seems conceivable that the mind could exist apart from the brain, this might simply be because mental states are multiply realizable, possibly instantiated in physical systems other than brains, and not because they can totally exist independently of any material substrate. Thus, functionalism, even in principle, is oh, sorry. Thus, functionalism, even in principle consistent with dualism, has in practice become the favored theory of materialists. Just on Occam's razor, it's essentially the idea that one should not needlessly multiply or kind of complicate theories. A theory with the least amount or the kind of minimum amount of necessary things is better than one that has all these various convolutions, one could say. Some questions. Hello, Clever. Welcome in. Welcome in. Thank you for joining us as always. We're just a couple of pages into the reading. I hope you've been well. Some might question whether the idea of multiple realizability on which functionalism rests is really all that plausible in the first place. Should we accept so readily the suggestion that a sophisticated robot of the sort described in the science fiction novels of Isaac Asimov, in the Terminator movies, or the character Data on Star Trek, can be said, literally, to think and feel as we do? If we accept that such creations of fictions are at least conceivable, that we can coherently imagine a creature constructed of nothing but steel and plastic, yet which has a mind, then this would seem to give some support to the functionalist. After all, if you could really meet Data or the Terminator and engage in a conversation with them, would you really have any doubt that they were as intelligent as you? If Dad asked you what time it was, wouldn't this be reason to think he desired to know the time? If the Terminator told you he had come from the far future, wouldn't this be evidence that he believed that that's where he came from? Beliefs and desires are kinds of mental states, so anything that possessed them could surely be said to have a mind. One might, nevertheless, object that such creatures wouldn't have the feelings and emotions we have. But why couldn't they? Doesn't this objection reflect merely the bias of science fiction writers, or the stereotype of the cold, unfeeling machine, rather than any objective limits on the kind of robots that might, in theory, be constructed? The functionalist, it must be remembered, holds that feelings and emotions, too, are nothing but states having certain kinds of causal relations. Why couldn't such states be built into a robot? If a robot had an internal state that was caused by damage to its body, that caused it to scream and cry out and look frantically for ways to repair the damage, why couldn't this count as pain? If you saw Data flailing on the ground, shrieking and sobbing and holding his side after having been shot with a ray gun, wouldn't you try to help him? Would you say to him, "Cut it out, you're just a robot, you don't really feel anything"? And what if he told you that it hurt his feelings to hear you say that? Mind you wonder, at least a little, whether he really did have feelings after all. The functionalist would argue further that the suggestion that there could be thinking and feeling robots cannot in any event be dismissed by anyone who takes seriously the general materialist claim that mental states and processes are entirely explicable by reference to states and processes of the brain. A clump of neurons is, after all, no less purely physical than a cluster of silicone computer chips in the head of a robot. Why should it be so outrageous to suggest that something whose brain is made of such computer chips can think and feel as we do? Why should electrical current passing between computer chips be any less capable of producing mental states than the electrochemical signals sent by neurons? A single neuron performs a relatively simple task. It gets signals from some neurons and then sends signals to others. Why couldn't a computer chip do that? Suppose a very small clump of your neurons were replaced by a tiny computer chips, and then they received and sent signals in just the way the original neurons did. Is there any doubt that you'd be just as conscious and capable of thought as you were before? An artificial heart doesn't make the person receiving it any less capable of pumping blood. An artificial heart is still a heart, because it performs the functions of a heart. So why should artificial neurons be any less capable? Oh, excuse me. I had to step away for a moment. Apologies about that, everyone. I don't know if you heard. Someone just knocked at my door, so I just needed to talk for a little bit. Thank you for the head pat, Teal. Very kind. Unforgivable. Stream ruined. I'm gonna delete my account. It's so over, bros. It's so over. I have to end it. I have to end it. I can never stream again. A single neuron. Oh, where were we? Oh yes. An artificial heart doesn't make the person receiving it any less capable of pumping blood. An artificial heart is still a heart because it performs the functions of a heart. So why should artificial neurons be any less capable of supporting thought and feeling, if they do exactly what real neurons do? Suppose further that the nerve endings in your hand were replaced by artificial nerve endings, made of microscopic wires of the sort of tiny mechanisms familiar from nanotechnology, that functioned exactly as the originals did, registering damage to the body, the presence of heat and cold, and so forth. Is there any reason to doubt that you would be just as capable of feeling pain? warmth, or coolness as you were before? If so, why exactly? The artificial nerve endings function physically in exactly the same way as the originals, so why shouldn't their ultimate effects be the same? 2,000-year-old warrior. I was not defeated. I was not defeated by a knock at the door. Oh, perhaps I was. So over. Not professional. Not professional. I have a new desk, a new big desk. I thought I felt like a real streamer, a real streaming boy, but it's so over. Now imagine that our neurons and nerve endings are gradually replaced in a similar fashion, and that various organs, liver, kidney, and lung, are replaced by extremely complex and sophisticated duplicates, constructed of plastic, steel, and silicone, but which exactly mimic the functionings of the originals. Is there any reason to doubt that you would be able to think and feel just as well as you ever did? The new functions and neurons function physically exactly as the originals did. So why wouldn't their end results be identical as well? Bracket, and if you do somehow lose the ability to think and feel as before, exactly when does this happen? Replacing one clump of neurons and nerve endings had no such effect. So why should replacing 2, 3, 2,000, or 2,000,000? Finally, imagine that eventually your entire body and nervous system is replaced by these artificial duplicates. Is there any reason to doubt, or is there any doubt that you'd be just as conscious as you were before? Again, if so, why exactly? Your new parts are entirely physical, but so were your original neurons and organs, and the new parts function exactly as originals did. So what reason could there be for doubting that you still have a mind? Notice, however, that you would in effect have become a robot. But if you, having been transformed gradually into a robot, could nevertheless think and feel, why deny that to other robots? Or why deny that other robots, the kind made in a factory or laboratory, might also? As this argument indicates, functionalism is closely tied to the idea that the brain is a kind of computer, with the mind a kind of program, the software that runs on the hardware of the brain. Oh man, if Clonk was here, if he's still here, he would. I imagine he'd be like, "Oh yeah, that makes total sense. That's exactly how he thinks." To be fair, Clonk is a machine, so he chats with the computer. He just is a machine, so I guess this, yeah, functionalism is correct. We will explore this in greater detail in Chapter 6. Suffice for it for now to note that this suggestion provides the materialist with a way of elucidating the functionalist thesis, and of arguing that it eliminates the mystery of how something purely material could have a mind. A computer program is something abstract, a mathematical structure that can be understood and specified, on paper or in the programmer's mind, long before anyone implements it in a machine. Yet for the program to become real, or to have any impact on the physical world and be usable by us, it must be so implemented. Unless you can download it onto an actual piece of computer hardware, it remains purely abstract and effectuous. It needn't be any particular computer that does the job. Some programs can be run on almost any computer, but there must be some computer or other that does it. This may serve as a fitting analogy for the mind. We can understand the mind in functionalist terms by abstracting away from it any of the physical details of its implementation in human brains and focusing only on its causal structures. This may give the illusion that it is capable of existing apart from some implementation, but in fact, just like a computer program, it must be implemented in some physical system or other, and if not necessarily in a human brain, then perhaps in a robotic or extraterrestrial brain. Furthermore, despite a program's abstract character, there is no mystery about how it can be run on a piece of computer hardware. But then, by analogy, there need be no mystery about how the mind can be instantiated in the brain, like computer software. It is merely an instance of a complex abstract structure being realized in a complex piece of matter. And that's the end of kind of that section. Not the end of the chapter, we still have a few pages to go. About just under 10. But I think that's a very strong case. I think out of the various theories we've heard from the materialist, that seems very strong. Particularly the way that the materialist basically shuts away the dualist claim. It might be, basically saying that, well, if the brain can be instantiated in things other than humans, in the say case of a computer, then the idea that just because the brain and mind are separable does not imply that the mind is thus immaterial. It's just another way of running things on another physical system. So I think that's a very clever way the materialist uses functionalism to his advantage. But now we get on to the burden of proof. Despite the ambiguities that plague attempts to give the materialist thesis a precise formulation, then, it remains powerful. If the common sense, down to earth character of materialism is sometimes overstated by its advocates, it nevertheless seems to get strong support from general trends in modern science. Moreover, in functionalism, materialists have a promising general philosophical theory of how the mind might be realized in something purely material, and there is compelling evidence from neuroscience that mental states and processes are indeed inextricably tied to mental states and processes in the brain. What implications does this all have for the dispute between. What implications does this have? Sorry. Let me get a drink of water. Sorry, I felt my throat was getting a little dry. What implication does this all have for the dispute between materialism and dualism? Many materialists are of the opinion that the considerations adduced so far are sufficient by themselves to establish this rational superiority of their creed. Materialism is, in their estimation, fully capable in principle of explaining the mind. The work remaining is little more than a mopping up operation, the mere filling in of details. Dualists have effectively been refuted. At the very least, the burden of proof lies with them, not with the materialist. Or not with the materialist. Given the overall evidence, materialism has a presumption in its favor. It is innocent until proven guilty. So it might seem. Dualists could reply, however, that the philosophical advantage claimed by materialism may be illusory, with the current consensus in its favor a reflection more of intellectual fashion than of objective, dispassionate evaluation of the relevant arguments. In particular, dualists might argue that there is no good reason to take seriously the suggestion that, in a debate between materialism and dualism, it is materialism which must get the benefit of the doubt. The purported historical justification for such an attitude is familiar enough. For centuries, it is said, materialists and their opponents did philosophical battle, with neither side gaining the advantage. But then along came modern science, and phenomena which previously seemed inexplicable except in terms of supernatural forces increasingly succumbed to the materialistic explanation. The mind is merely the last holdout, and that circumstance is only temporary. For with the rise of neuroscience, we now stand on the threshold of finally explaining the mental in entirely physical terms, and the materialist worldview will thereafter be completely vindicated. But however influential it has been, this historical philosophical case has, arguably, been overstated. First, the advance of science, far from settling the mind-body problem in favor of materialism, seems to have made it more acute. Modern science has, as noted in Chapter 2, revealed that physical objects are composed of intrinsically colorless, tasteless, and odorless particles. Colors, tastes, and odors thus, in some sense, exist only in the minds of the observer. But then it is mysterious how they are related to the brain, which, like other material objects, is composed of nothing more than colorless, tasteless, and odorless particles. Science also tells us that the appearance of purpose Science also tells us that the appearance of purpose in nature is an illusion. Strictly speaking, fins, for example, don't have the purpose of propelling fish through the water, for they have in fact no purpose at all, being the products of the same meaningless and impersonal causal processes that are supposed to have brought about all complex phenomena, including organic phenomena. Rather, fins merely operate as if they had such a purpose, because the creatures that first developed them, as a result of a random genetic mutation, just happened thereby to have a competitive advantage over those that did not. The result mimicked the products of purposeful design. In reality, it is said, there was no design at all. But if purposes are thus mind dependent, not truly present in the physical world but only projected onto it by us, then this makes that act of projection and the intentionality of which it is an instance, as are human purposes for that matter, at least difficult to explain in terms of processes occurring in the brain, which seem intrinsically as brutally meaningless and purposeless as are all other purely physical processes. In short, science has explained the sensible qualities and meaning that seem to common sense to exist in reality only by sweeping them under the rug of the mind. That is, it hasn't really explained them at all, but merely put off any explanation by relocating them out of the physical and into the mental realm. There they remain, however, forming a considerable bump under the rug, one that seemingly cannot be removed by further scientific sweeping. Oh, that's a read emote. Hype reading. Oh, that's a great. I like that. Ooh, that's a good idea. I should definitely get like a cute reading emote. Get away from me, fly. Like a little reading emote. Maybe like me sitting in a chair, or maybe it could be like me like asleep reading a book. Like I was reading, but I fell asleep. I think those are some very interesting points. The qualia of physical reality that we seem to, I was only just talking about how much I love that art that I have on my second monitor over there, my background. How colorful and beautiful it is, and the expressions and everything just going on in it. But in reality, those are just colorless, odorless, and meaningless particles. It's only me who is giving them any sort of meaning in my mind. But if there isn't any meaning at all, if my brain is simply somehow coming up with this meaning stuff, get a kid and make an emote of them reading. Yeah, I like being able to tie back. Oh my I'll have to find someone to have a child with and introduce them to the glorious world of reading when they're older. I'm going to like if I become a father, I'm going to have my child be like doing music and combat sports and reading and a load of other stuff. And then they can figure out what things they like. I'm not going to be like you have to do 50 different things all at once. Because then they might find something that they do really enjoy, but there's so much that they're doing that they can't give themselves to it. So it's good to give children as much experience of different things as possible and encourage them in everything. But don't control them. Don't be like they have to know how to play like two different instruments and they have to take extra language classes. Oh, is that how you felt, Clever? Did you have to do a lot of stuff when you were younger? I'm not too sure if what you might mean by that. Whoa. Were you impressed how I tied back my earlier discussion, Teal, about my background? It is a very interesting thing. And it seems modern science kind of has difficulty explaining such purposeness, such qualia in a physical sense. And then, of course, when he's talking about intentionality, so a good example, of giving purpose to, say, the fins, but also so for example, Teal, you might be thinking about the words that I'm talking about right now, but the idea of you're thinking about something, so your mind is directed towards something. It is about something. But what is it physically for a clump of matter to be about another clump of matter? That doesn't seem to be possible under say, a purely materialist conception. It seems, my brain thinking about the book in my hand, what does that mean? I know it hurts my brain too, Teal. It's quite difficult to think about, but I think that's why these types of books are really great to read. You know, you don't have to spend ages thinking about it. You don't have to worry about it. But I do enjoy reading what those who do it for a living, who do actually really spend time to understand this type of stuff. I love their explanations. Second, the debate. And I feel like with these types of areas where it's kind of a long paragraphs and there's a lot of little points being made, it can be good just to pause a moment, pull back a little moment for a moment or two, and just kind of further explain things a little. Give a little bit more explanation for those who might be struggling, or even not even those who are struggling, just to kind of round out the ideas and try to apply them to media things around us. Second, the debate over materialism has arguably never been more than tangentially concerned with how best to explain physical phenomena, the motions of the planets, the nature of chemical reactions, or Second, the debate over materialism has arguably never been more than tangentially concerned with how best to explain physical phenomena, the motions of the planets, the nature of chemical reactions, or even the origins of life. That is to say, straightforwardly, scientific issues seem never to have been the crucial ones. Rather, the debate has, for 2.5 millennia, become focused primarily on three fundamental metaphysical issues: the nature of the mind and its relation to the body, the ontological and epistemological status of mathematical and other apparently abstract objects, and the question of the existence of God. For materialism, now genuinely to have the upper hand, would require that materialist arguments have been victorious, or have at least been shown to be considerably more plausible in each of these subject domains. Has this happened? No one familiar with the recent history of philosophy can honestly think so. This is obviously so in the case of the first domain, which is the very subject presently at issue, the philosophy of mind. Materialism may be the majority position in contemporary philosophy of mind, but not because anyone has proved it true. Indeed, as we will see in the succeeding chapters, virtually all the work done today by materialist philosophers of mind consists, at the bottom, of trying to defend their favoured brands of materialism over various objections, which are implicitly or explicitly anti-materialist in character. That is, to the effect that the brand of materialism in question fails genuinely to explain some given mental phenomena, such as intentionality, qualia, or so on, in entirely physical terms. Moreover, these objections are typically variations on the same criticisms of materialism that have been given for 2,500 years, with modern materialists no closer to answering them decisively than they were their intellectual forebears. Dualists might argue that the fact of the project of naturalizing the mind, or attempting to show it to be explicable without resorting to non-physical properties, is as popular is as popular as it is a sign of the weakness of materialist philosophy of mind, rather than of strength. For if there were no serious doubt that the mind is explicable in purely material terms, the naturalization project should have been largely accomplished long ago. The dominance of materialism in the philosophy of mind would seem to rest largely on the belief that materialism has been established everywhere. Again, the dominance of materialism in the philosophy of mind would seem to rest largely on the belief that materialism has been established everywhere else, so that it is reasonable to expect it to succeed where the mind is concerned. But it seems clear that materialism has not been established everywhere else, at least if we keep in mind that it is metaphysical disputes, not scientific ones, which have historically been at issue. Consider the second domain of debate between materialists and their opponents, namely the debate over abstract objects. Okay, this might get a little bit heady. If there's points that I can explain, I will attempt to do so. I feel like it just can, knowing what some of these things are, or where this is probably going to go. Among philosophers, mathematics has long been the paradigm of knowledge that is absolutely certain, and this is because the truths of mathematics are necessary truths, true in all possible worlds. For this reason, it seems clear that these truths cannot be truths about anything either mental or material. Facts about the mental are facts about a subjective realm. But mathematics is objectively true, utterly independent of human interests. Facts about the material world are facts about a realm that is constantly in flux, a domain of contingency, but mathematical facts are unchanging and eternal. Excuse me. Ah, I tried to spread. I thought I had that. I saw the green line go up. I thought I clicked the button to mute. I'm so mad. I think I must have double clicked it. It didn't sound like a cute sneeze. I tried to like suppress it anyway. Thank you, Teal. Oh, thank you, Teal. That's very nice. Ugh. It was cute. Oh, oh no. Sometimes I can sneeze, I can sound like a pixie girl. You know, they do that like really high pitched sneeze, and other times it's like a foghorn. I don't know how to describe it. Like a car horn, like loud. But for real, same. Yeah, it's just like random what it can be. It's like every time it's a roll of the dice, and if you happen to get unlucky, it's just like big and loud, and everyone will look at you. The worst part is when is when is when you keep sneezing and like someone goes, I got that dad sneeze. Exactly, that's what it is. The dad sneeze. It rumbles throughout the house. Oops. But you know when you sneeze and someone's like, "Oh, bless you," and then you sneeze again, and they're like, "Bless you." Then you sneeze again, and they're like, "Bless you," and like it gets. And then after like I feel like it's after the fourth or fifth one. After you've sneezed for like the fourth or fifth time, it's like, okay, fuck you. You're you're clearly not blessed. Let me get away from you. You deaf people said, "Oh, I need to." For some reason, it doesn't show on my chat, but at least it shows on my on screen. I need to download the stuff. Or maybe OBS has something that I can do that will make it show on my chat. The OBS doc doesn't show people sad. But anyway, let's get into this topic that I'm very interested in. Honestly, the idea of mathematical truths and necessary truths. So some of the things just to explain. So he says that facts about the material world are are facts about a realm that is constantly in flux. So in flux here simply means that it is constantly changing. So you could never say, oh, uh, what would you know, that car is over there or that car is blue, because by the time that you've said this and someone has taken note and has looked at the car or maybe has perceived the car or what have you, it's now been maybe a couple of milliseconds even, or maybe the car has moved in some fashion or what have you. Essentially the car has changed, even by changing in time. It's gotten older, hasn't it? So can you really say that that is that exact car that you were talking about? Of course, when we're in the real world, we don't, we acknowledge that when we talk about that car, and we all look at that of a car, we can recognize that, yeah, we're talking about that car. But there is an issue that if everything is changing at all times, there is no objective thing, there is no necessary thing that we're talking about. And that's actually an issue that plagued essentially oh god, who was it? It wasn't the Eleatics. I think it was I always get mixed up between the Eleatics and the other group. There were two, the pre-Socratic philosophers. You had Meno, not Meno, sorry, you had Zeno and Parmenides arguing that everything was one and that change doesn't exist. And then you had people like Heraclitus and Anaximander, the monists, essentially arguing that everything was constantly in flux. Thales as well with his water, Heraclitus with fire. that everything was constantly changing, and that there was no objective, unchanging thing for which we could say truthfully that this thing is always as it is. That but then there are various issues. But I wonder, will we touch on this? That's something that I could get into another time. I think it's a very interesting topic. And then there's also a domain of contingency. Essentially, contingency is the idea that things are contingent on other things. For anything to have been brought into existence, for example, it is contingent on that thing to have been brought in. Well, no, that's more cause, I guess. So I won't say much more on that because my terminology will be a little off, and it's very important to be kind of proper terminology. Okay, so mathematics thus seems to describe a third realm, or third realm. No, fuck you guys. A third realm. Reliant. Yeah, sort of like that. Things are reliant on each other. Contingent things are contingent of something. They require something else to, for example, exist. And these are various arguments that go into theology. The idea that if everything is contingent, well, sorry, if all things that are, how it's, I believe it's Aquinas' third way, the argument from contingency, that eventually leads us to the consideration of, but there's very specific definitions of these things that I can't remember right now. Essentially, it's like we get to something that is not conditioned upon anything else, but is the ultimate condition, ultimate thing that everything is. Wait, oh no, I forgot to turn off ads. I'm so mad. Oh no. Oh, I don't know if you guys are watching, are still watching. I hope the ads. Ads, why? I forgot. You know what I always do? I always run my ads. I could have sworn that that would have worked. Did it not update? Okay, hang on. If you guys are seeing ads, I'm sorry. I forgot to turn them off. Okay, I'm gonna just chill for a moment. You know what? I can take this moment to sit back, to stretch. I guess this is a good. Oh, it's for 3 minutes as well. Oh, it's annoying. Okay, well, nonetheless, I think what I'll do. Hang on. Okay, so ads are definitely off now. I'm pretty certain. I don't know if I'll wait a little bit. A little bit. Okay, I think they started around 2 minutes, so I'll wait another minute and a bit. I really need to get myself. I need to have a little checklist, maybe on my. Yeah, that's what I might do. I'm gonna put some sticky notes on the bottom of my desk or something, or desk my screen, that says all the different things I need to do. Well, the ads are off now, so hopefully that doesn't happen again. But now I'm gonna have another hour of pre-roll ads, but I don't think I'm even gonna stream for an hour more. Well, maybe I've now been conditioned to have to do that. I can at least get a good chunk into it. Oh no, Teal, I'm so sorry. I don't know if we're back yet. I'm so sorry. Sketchbook. I really hope that's not I hope it was just like a normal sketchbook and that wasn't like some kind of thingy, like electronic sketchbook, like iPad something. I would feel so bad. I hope it's okay. Sorry, Teal. I'm sorry, everyone else. Oh. Okay, that is the first time that I have ever done that though. That I've forgotten to turn off ads. I'm back, but mine were only 2 minutes. They can go for three. Yeah, it was set to 3 minutes. Nah, it was a normal one. Okay. I would have felt so bad if like potentially damaged something like that. Uh, I think we're all back though. Whew. Yeah, I'm gonna after stream ends, I'm gonna grab a sticky note and put remember to turn off ads after start of stream. That's very important, I think. Apologies, everyone. I promise there will be a time when I do not forget to do something. Wait, no, hang on. I do not forget to do. I yeah, that makes sense. I was wondering if I needed to double up the negative. Mathematics thus seems to describe a third realm, a domain of abstract entities, numbers, geometrical forms, that cannot be reduced to either the mental or the physical. That is, it seems to lead to what is called Platonism, after Plato, the philosopher most widely associated with this sort of view. Many philosophers have, of course, attempted to disprove this conception of mathematics and to show that mathematical truth can, despite appearances, be naturalized. The point is that such attempts have at best consistently proven to be highly controversial, and more commonly rejected by most philosophers as ultimately implausible. The dialectic is familiar to philosophers of mathematics. The nature of mathematical truth seems inevitably to lead to Platonism, otherwise known as mathematical Platonism as well. Naturalistically inclined philosophers try to show otherwise. Their attempts then prove to be riddled with insuperable difficulties, or even subtly to entail Platonism of a different kind. This pattern seems to be the same today as if it had been for the whole of the history of philosophy, and if anything, it is not naturalism, but Platonism, appearing as it does to follow inevitably from the nature of mathematics, and having withstood every attempt to disprove it, which ought to get the benefit of the doubt, especially given that many mathematicians themselves, in their philosophical moments, tend to be Platonists. So that's even a point that, if someone argues that, well, if there's an argument that one can make that the sciences are the only way that we can have knowledge, basically, scientism, I guess you would call it. It's a using kind of a derogatory term. Someone is a scientist, not a scientist, but a scientismist, I guess. Scientism. The belief that the science is the only way that we can know knowledge. And one of the arguments the scientists could make in this example is that the science has given us the most amount of knowledge, in our world. And then you would have to kind of qualify it by saying that the thing that has given us the most amount of knowledge is the only way of making knowledge, which of course is a controversial claim in itself. But if we accept that, then the argument would be logically or formally valid, I suppose. But of course, one could argue, well, no, mathematics or science isn't the thing that has given us the most amount of knowledge. Scientific knowledge, of course, is entirely predictive as well. Rather, mathematics seems to be the more influential or more correct field of knowledge that has given us the most amount of knowledge. So, one could argue in scientism like that. But this is kind of just similar to that, where there's sort of these. But one of the things would be that the mathematical knowledge seems to be of a different kind than that of the scientific knowledge. The mathematical seems necessary, objective, truthful, regardless of the situation. The scientific is, there's things like perspective, or how do we even interpret the results? It's purely predictive. We have to build theories that seem to align with it. Although I'm not too familiar with the philosophy of mathematics. It's something I'd definitely be interested in reading, though. What holds for mathematical objects holds no less for other apparently abstract objects. When we understand that, wrong page. When we understand mathematics, we grasp a proposition. The proposition that 2 plus 2 equals 4, say. But we also grasp propositions when we understand any other kind of truth. And as in mathematics, the objects of our understanding seem clearly to be neither mental nor physical. In understanding the Pythagorean theorem, oh my god, bros, the Pythagorean theorem, a squared equals b squared plus c squared, it's back. Our teachers said it would be useful in class, and it's coming in useful right now. At least just having a cursory knowledge of it, perhaps. Clever, you should know about this. You should know about the Pythagorean model. You're always talking about your maths classes. It's so exciting, guys. We're talking about the book just referenced the Pythagorean theorem. Maths sucks. I couldn't have asked for a more perfect moment. Thank you, Cliff. He's probably working on the Pythagorean theorem right now. I'm figuring out how to prove it. Ooh. In understanding in understanding the Pythagorean theorem, or that Kaiser or Caesar was assassinated on the Ides of March, you and I understand the same thing in each case. It is not that I understand my own subjective Pythagorean theorem, and you understand yours. What we understand is something objective, and something that holds true independently of either of our minds. So it cannot be something mental, but neither can it be something material. For the fact the theorem describes would hold true, whatever occurs in the physical world, and even if there were no physical world. This again is no less true of propositions about physical things. The proposition that Caesar was assassinated on the Ides of March would remain true, even if the entire physical universe disappeared tomorrow. In grasping it, you can't be grasping something material. This way of putting the argument for propositions as abstract immaterial entities is associated with Gottlob Frege, 1848 to 1925, but the basic idea goes back a long way in the history of philosophy, and ultimately to Plato. Plato is also associated, of course, with the idea that our words for the properties of things, redness, roundness, or goodness, refer to universals or forms, which exist in some sense abstractly, independently of particular concrete objects, that is, particular red or round or good things. Nominalists famously deny this, but equally famously, their attempts to make sense of properties without appealing to abstract universals tend either to be implausible or to entail a subtle commitment to universals after all. So you have realists versus nominalism, or realism versus nominalism. Realism believing that universals are real, and nominalists arguing that universals do not exist. Uh, it's a bit of a, it's a very complicated topic, and has been probably some of the main. It's so important. I would argue it's probably one of the most fundamental aspects of well, philosophy and metaphysics. Because I feel like so much flows from your position on it. And for those of you wondering, I suppose I would consider myself a realist. I do believe in abstract objects, but there's people much more intelligent than I, who probably have very strong arguments for them. Well, there's different types of nominalism, and the point that Fesser makes here, that their attempts to do so, to explain away or argue against realism, essentially often entail a subtle requirement of realism or universals in the first place. It's sort of like so the universalist or the realist will say that the redness that seems to exist across various different things that we all call and can identify as red, or the goodness of things. And goodness is a particularly interesting one, because to say of something that is good, so a good man might be a man who is just, honorable, always does the right thing, for example, um, is not exactly the same way that we use the word good when we talk of, say, an instrument or some music. We use these terms good in different ways, but we ultimately mean the same. It's sort of, I believe it's called an analogical. So there's different ways of talking about things. There is you can talk about things univocally, which is to say of the same thing, that you mean the same thing. So you might say, what would it be? The I'm trying to think of a univocal example, and I can't. I can't have one in my mind right now. I've suddenly gone blank. Maybe if I explain equivocal predication, that may make more sense. So you could say, uh, say there's a bat in a house and it's flying around your room, and you grab the bat that's by your bedside table and you attempt to hit the bat with the bat. You're using the word bat the same way. Or sorry, you're using the same word bat, but you're using bat in completely different ways. That's equivocal predication. Univocal predication is when you use a word to mean exactly the same thing. So a good example is if I say Socrates is a man and Plato is a man, I'm both referring in the same way that they are both men, that they are both man. I'm using that in sort of univocal sense. But analogically, a goodness seems not to be equivocal when I say that something is good and something other than that thing is good. So a good car or a good musician, I'm not exactly using the term good in different ways. I seem to be using it in a similar way, but not a similar way such that it is univocal. I'll have to talk to you when I'm more lucid. No worries, clever. I feel like some people could get high. Some people would need to be completely like lucid, wide awake to be able to understand me at times, and then other times they'd have to be like high as balls to be able to be like, oh, I see what he means, and then they probably don't. But so goodness is a great example. Uh, when you say that the weightlifter and the sprinter are both good, you know, that they're good sprinters or are good weightlifters, we're not using good in exactly the same way. It is not univocal. But we are not also using it equivocally, for we clearly mean some relationship. There's clearly some relationship there between a good sprinter and a good weightlifter. We mean in good in relation to their specific sports. So we would argue, well, I've heard it argued, that we would use the term analogically. We would predicate goodness of those things analogically. But so sorry, I don't even know why I why I went into that rant. Uh, but the realist essentially argues that things like goodness, realness, or justness, and these are sort of transcendental universals. But then you have things like carness or treeness, or and these are kind of a little bit more difficult to think about. Redness, roundness, squareness, all these things that that we can see instantiated in particular things. And the realist argues that in some fashion, these aspects of things, the redness and roundness and squareness, exist in some way, not physically, uh, other than in their particular instantiations of of a particular red ball, for instance, or a red car. But then redness can be abstracted away, and that it exists in its own realm or its own higher reality, one could say. But the nominalist could simply come along and say, no, the word redness in this case is just a way that we humans, in thinking about things, have labeled things. It's the way we organize things or words we come up with. Sort of it's functional to do so. We do it for things that are similar in some fashion. We see something. So, for example, I have a red can of Coke on my desk, and I have the red Focusrite audio interface right next to me, or right next to it. Their redness is not exactly the same, but we'll just imagine that they were. The nominalist would essentially say that the redness between those two doesn't actually exist. There's no actual redness there. It's just a useful kind of thing, a useful way of categorization. Categorizing, however, similar things. And the nominalist, I have suddenly obtained a bed desk. Nice, nice. Be nice and relaxed, clever. The the realist, however, can shoot back right away to the nominalist and say, well, what's similarity? What do you mean by similarity? What is similar things, if not some relationship between them that they have that can be abstracted away from them? So, in attempting to explain universals as just similar objects that we talk about, the nominalist implicitly accepts the concept of a universal called similarity. Now, maybe he may. Now, I'm sure there's further arguments, but essentially, it's often kind of the case that many nominalist arguments against realism end up sort of picturing a higher order universal almost. But there's other strands of nominalism. I'm sure the much more advanced arguments get way more technical than I could possibly understand. But that's sort of just a brief talk about nominalism and realism. It's a topic that I find fascinating. Okay, there's 3 pages left, or 2 pages and a bit. Let's see if I can get through it without going for another 20-minute talk. All of this is controversial. Indeed, that is precisely the point. The debate over these matters is simply no closer today to being settled, much less settled in favor of materialism or naturalism, than it ever was. There have always been critics of Platonism about mathematics, propositions, and properties, and they have always failed decisively to make their case. For all that, they may turn out to be correct, but if so, no one has yet shown that they will. If naturalism about these purportedly abstract entities is favoured by many today, this may only be because, as in the philosophy of mind, philosophers assume that naturalism or materialism has been somehow established in other contexts, and so must be the correct view to take in this one. But then the state of things in the debate over abstract objects cannot be appealed to as independent evidence of there being a reasonable presumption in favour of materialism generally. Okay, he's about to talk about God. I can see it coming in. I can see the word God. I'm just going to read through. Again, I will note that Edward Fesser is a theologian, well, I don't know if he could specifically be called a theologian, but he is a thomist, and he is a Christian. So, just understand that. You may, if you're someone who completely disagrees with the idea of God, that's totally fine. But we'll just, we'll just read through this. The same thing appears to be true where the debate over the existence of God is concerned. There are, of course, a number of standard objections to the traditional arguments for God's existence, but there has also been in recent decades a great revival of interest among philosophers in the philosophy of religion in general and in the traditional theistic arguments in particular. Many contemporary philosophers of religion hold that the traditional arguments can be reformulated in a way that makes them immune to the usual objections, that many of those objections rest in the first place of misunderstandings or even caricatures. So philosophically sophisticated is the work of these recent defenders of traditional religious beliefs, and so significant is the challenge it poses to atheistic naturalism, that the prominent atheistic philosopher Quinton Smith has gone so far as to concede that the great majority of naturalist philosophers have an unjustified belief that naturalism is true, and an unjustified belief that theism, or supernaturalism, is false. Smith's view is not that these naturalistic philosophers are mistaken. As an atheist, he shares their naturalism, but rather that most of his fellow naturalists and atheists have not made a serious attempt to grapple with the powerful arguments that can and have been made for the other side, so that the level of confidence they have in the truth of their own position is unwarranted. The question of whether God exists is, in short, as live a philosophical issue as it ever was, and cannot reasonably be assumed to have been settled in a way that would provide support for a presumption in favour of naturalism and materialism. I am trapped by the bed. Oh no. Clever. Oh no. Oh no. I hope you manage to get out. We might find Clever in like 5 years from now, still trapped. A materialist could accept these points about the debate over mathematics, propositions, properties, and God, as Smith appears to do. Nothing said in, in this section shows, or is intended to show, that materialism is false. But to accept them would be to acknowledge that there is no argument for a presumption in favor of a materialist account of the mind. Such an account may have to stand or fall entirely on its own merits. Of course, one can independently argue for a broadly naturalistic account of mathematics, propositions, properties, and the origins of the universe. Then one could reasonably hold materialism to be the natural default position to take in the philosophy of mind. But by the same token, if one has instead independent reasons to endorse Platonism and or theism, one could thereby have a strong ground for giving dualism the benefit of the doubt. The a priori plausibility of either side in the debate between materialism and dualism depends largely on the background of metaphysical assumptions brought to bear in evaluating this debate. If those metaphysical issues have not been settled in favor of materialism, then there are no grounds for putting the burden of proof on the dualist. Materialism, then, whatever its merits, may not be as quite as overwhelmingly strong a position as is often assumed. This is especially so when one considers that nothing so far has really undermined the arguments for dualism discussed in the previous chapter. Even the claims made by some materialists that the mind's multiple realizability suffices to explain away the dualist conceivability argument is dubious, for the point of that argument is not that it is conceivable that the mind could exist in physical systems other than the brain, but rather that it is conceivable that it could exist apart from anything physical at all. So far we have seen no reason for doubting this. The princeps have fallen. Yet to give a reason for doubting, it would seem necessary if materialism. I have to head to sleep. We're literally on the last paragraph, so you picked a good time. Laughs a lot. I will get through it. Yet to give a reason for doubting, it would seem necessary if materialism is to be established, and accomplishing this, showing that it is not even conceivable that the mind could exist apart from the physical world, is surely a tall order. If the interaction problem poses a difficulty for dualism, the dualistic arguments we've examined pose an equally daunting challenge to materialism. Accordingly, the materialist has so far achieved a stalemate at most, and appeals to the advances of science, the greater parsimony of a materialist ontology, and general correlations between the mind and brain, etc., ultimately cannot break it. Materialists must go beyond this and show that all the various specific aspects of the mind, qualia and consciousness, thought and intentionality, are, despite appearances to the contrary, purely material properties, features that cannot conceivably exist apart from some physical substrate. The devil is in the details, and materialism and dualism stand and fall with their ability to account for those details. It is to those details that we now at last turn. And that would lead us on to chapter 4, Qualia. I was going to walk my dogs, but I'll stay for the last bit. Oh, thank you very much, Teal, and I hope you have a lovely time walking your dogs. It's cute that you have multiple. They're probably very good friends. They probably enjoy each other's company. But there you go, Laughs a Lot, and Teal, and everyone else. That was the last little bit. Thank you. When I saw you were heading off, Laughs a Lot, I was like, wait, no, it's the last bit. Last little bit. Just one little bit. Just one more score, Arthur. Just one more little score. Oh, I love that video. It's so good. You guys don't even know what I'm talking about. It's a Red Dead Redemption animation. But I had to kind of speed read a little bit. I hope that was even understandable or followable. Thank you all for joining me as always. I think I got about an hour and a half into the stream. I'm quite happy with that, despite the 3 minutes taken up. I do not know the reference, but I'm glad I stayed for the end. Thank you very much. Laughs a Lot. I think we'll look for someone to raid into. Who's on the line? I think let's Cat Kings is doing some really nice ASMR. I'm considering that. I've got to head, but I'll see you next time. Have a lovely time. Have a lovely sleep, last a lot, and have a good week. She's rating fruit. Okay, you know what? That sounds like a great. That sounds like a great person to raid. Give me their name real quick. So we're gonna move away from typical ASMR. Those of you who may be listening for such ASMR, I would advise. I would advise, maybe you can just be prepared that it will not be. It won't be ASMR anymore. Oh, that's such a cute emote. Okay, let me pull her up as well on as well over on my channel because I never get brought to the raid. I always have to panically rush on there. Okay, excellent. All right. Thank you everyone for joining. I think we got a nice chunk in. Oh, her model is so nice. I love all the roses. The roses are really sweet. They're a very nice touch. And the wizard hat is always good. The wizard hat looks like a shark fin. It looks like she could go to the bottom of her thing and go da dun da dun da dun 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 dun. The big the bow is like a butterfly. That's so pretty. But thank you all for joining me. Go raibh míle magat and slán go fóill.